A trembling voice, a woman pleading with all the breath left in her body. "Come on, I have a family. I have 4 kids." In the dark of a February night, her dashcam recorded every desperate second, her voice quivering as a cold metal barrel pressed against her head. She was begging not just for herself, but for the 4 young lives who would wake up and wonder where their mother had gone. Within hours, the ride that was supposed to be safe, ordinary, even routine, would end in a remote patch of woods outside Pittsburgh. When her body was found, lying in the cold, 1 gunshot to the back of her head, the entire city realized something far bigger than just one violent act had been set into motion. This is the story of an Uber ride that turned into a woman's final plea, and the investigation that revealed the depths of cruelty that one man was capable of. This is the story of Christina Spicuzza. Welcome back, my friends, to the True Crime Shadow. Thank you to all my amazing subscribers who continue to support this channel, and may your family stay safe wherever you are. If you're new here, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. Here, we bring you the hidden and the unheard, the true stories that are chilling, tragic, and sometimes almost unbelievable. Tonight's story is one that will leave you shaken, questioning the systems we trust and the people we think we know. So join me as we walk through the shadows of this case. Christina Spicuzza, known to her friends and family simply as Christy, was just 38 years old. She wasn't famous, she wasn't wealthy, she was an everyday mother, an Uber driver who was working to provide for her 4 children. Friends described her as warm, responsible, someone who carried her world on her back with a smile. She lived in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, a suburban community outside Pittsburgh. Her life was filled with the chaos of parenting, school schedules, homework, dinners, endless demands. But those who knew her said she carried it all with an almost unshakable patience. Her children, still young, were her anchor. Every long drive she took behind the wheel, every late shift, was for them. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't chasing money in unsafe ways. She was just working, like millions of other rideshare drivers around the world. On the other side of this story is Calvin Crew, 22 years old, from nearby Pitcairn, Pennsylvania. He was young, but already sliding into a darker path of crime. He wasn't known for responsibility or ambition, or for caring about much outside his immediate wants. Friends and acquaintances later said Crew had an edge to him, angry, impulsive, the kind of man who could switch from charm to rage in seconds. At the time of the crime, he was living with or connected closely to a girlfriend who, as we'll later see, would play an indirect role in setting the chain of events in motion. When these 2 lives crossed, Christina, the hardworking mother, and Calvin, a restless and dangerous young man, the results would be devastating. On the evening of February 10, 2022, Calvin Crew didn't even order his own ride. Instead, he used his girlfriend's phone to request an Uber. It was Christina who accepted the fare. She had driven countless passengers before, each one just another name on a screen. She had no reason to fear, no reason to believe that this night would be different. But from the moment Crew stepped into her car, it became clear he had a plan. He didn't sit quietly like most riders. He didn't wait patiently to arrive at his destination. Instead, during the ride, he pulled out a gun and held it to the back of Christina's head. Her dashcam, mounted on the dashboard, captured the chilling moments. In that recording, Christina's voice is soft, cracking, filled with terror. "Come on, I have a family," she pleads. "I have 4 kids." She isn't trying to fight him. She isn't trying to run. She is doing what so many victims do in the face of violence: bargaining, begging for humanity in someone who has none. Crew doesn't respond with compassion. He orders her to keep driving, to complete the trip. His voice is flat, commanding, detached. At one point, he leans forward, and with a deliberate motion, he shuts off the dashcam, cutting short the only window the world would have had into those final minutes. After that, the only record is silence, broken only by Christina's final breaths. For 2 days, her family and friends searched for her. Her car was found first, abandoned in Pitcairn on the morning of February 12th. Hours later, her body was discovered on Rosecrest Drive in Monroeville, just a short drive from where she had picked up her killer. She had been shot once in the back of the head. The news spread quickly. A mother of 4, an Uber driver, murdered on the job. The shock rippled through Pittsburgh and beyond. This wasn't just a random victim. It could have been anyone, any driver, any mother trying to make ends meet. Investigators moved quickly. The dashcam, though shut off before the final act, had already captured enough to prove chilling evidence. In those minutes of footage, they saw Crew's face, heard his voice, watched his gun pressed against Christina's skull. It was damning. But police needed more than just horror. They needed proof to track him down. Uber's digital records showed the ride had been ordered from an account belonging to Crew's girlfriend. That was the break they needed. Tracing phone data, GPS coordinates, and witness tips, detectives followed the digital trail straight to Calvin Crew. The community had played a role too. Calls to police, neighbors who had seen suspicious movements, even fragments of conversation that pieced together the puzzle. When Crew was arrested, he gave shifting stories. At one point, he tried to minimize his role, suggesting accidents or framing events as misunderstandings. But the evidence told another story. The dashcam, the location of her body, the bullet wound, and the timing of every move. As more details emerged, investigators revealed the depth of what happened. The gun used had connections to Crew's girlfriend, who had unknowingly, or perhaps knowingly, provided access. After the murder, there were reports that Crew attempted to access Christina's phone, possibly trying to enter banking apps or erase evidence. The cruelty wasn't just in taking her life, but in the cold calculation of what came after. For prosecutors, the case was straightforward in one sense. The evidence was overwhelming, but they also knew the public deserved full transparency. In March 2022, they released segments of the dashcam video. The community heard for the first time the trembling voice of Christina pleading for her life, begging for her children. It was unbearable, and yet it was crucial. Those words would haunt the jury 3 years later. The trial took time. The wheels of justice turned slowly, delayed by legal maneuvering, appeals, and questions about whether the death penalty should be on the table. In January 2025, just weeks before trial began, the district attorney announced they would not pursue death. It was a decision that some in the community found disappointing. Why should someone who showed no mercy deserve mercy? But prosecutors explained, death penalty trials are long, complex, and appeal after appeal can drag families through decades of pain. Instead, they would seek life without parole, ensuring Crew would never walk free again. The trial opened in early February 2025, almost 3 years to the day since Christina's murder. The courtroom was filled with tension. Her family, her fiancé, her children's loved ones, reporters, and curious neighbors. The dashcam footage was played. Jurors sat in silence as Christina's final words echoed in that room. "Come on, I have a family. I have 4 kids." Crew's defense tried to raise doubt. They suggested gaps in the timeline. They hinted at pressure from investigators. They painted Crew as a troubled young man, impulsive but not fully calculating. But the prosecution brought every piece of evidence: the Uber records, the girlfriend's phone, the GPS data, the firearm, and most damning of all, the dashcam that had caught Crew red-handed. The jury took less than an hour. On February 10, 2025, exactly 3 years after Christina had begged for her life in that car, the verdict was read: guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of kidnapping, guilty of robbery, guilty of weapons charges, guilty of evidence tampering. Calvin Crew's fate was sealed. On May 5, 2025, sentencing took place. Crew himself didn't even attend. He faced the court only through paperwork, his presence reduced to silence. The judge handed down life without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 13 to 26 years for kidnapping and robbery. His attorney announced Crew intended to appeal. But for Christina's family, there was a measure of justice. Not closure, because how could there be when 4 children had lost their mother, but justice nonetheless. Across social media, the case echoed for months. On Facebook, local stations shared updates, community members left condolences, prayers, and outrage. On Reddit, Pittsburgh residents dissected every detail, from the dashcam to the girlfriend's involvement. Fundraisers on GoFundMe raised money for her children. Twitter and TikTok spread clips of the trial, of prosecutors speaking about Christina's courage, of community vigils where candles burned late into the night. Her obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette painted the portrait of a woman who lived for her family, whose life was cut far too short. And in memorial pages, photos of her smile, her children beside her, stood in stark contrast to the cruelty of her death. When we step back and look at this story, we have to ask, how could something like this happen? Rideshare services like Uber and Lyft are built on trust. Trust between driver and passenger, trust in technology, trust in safety systems. Yet what protections truly exist when someone with a gun and intent enters the car? Christina did everything right. She had a dashcam, she followed procedure, she pleaded for her life. And still, she didn't make it home. For society, the Spicuzza case is more than just one man's crime. It's a reflection of the risks many workers face when technology creates opportunity without enough safeguards. Should drivers be allowed to refuse rides that feel unsafe without penalty? Should there be stricter checks on passengers, just as there are on drivers? Should Uber itself carry a greater responsibility in tragedies like these? These are questions that linger long after the headlines fade. Christina's children will grow up remembering not just the mother who drove to provide for them, but the way she was taken. They will remember a system that couldn't protect her, and a community that fought to honor her. And we, as observers, as storytellers, as true crime witnesses, are left to hold these questions in our hearts. Was justice truly served? Life in prison will keep Calvin Crew away from society, but does it heal the wound left behind? Can it ever replace the warmth of a mother's hug, the sound of her voice, the comfort of her presence? These are the shadows this case leaves us with. Thank you for staying with me through this difficult, heartbreaking story. If you found it as shocking and devastating as I did, please hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe to the True Crime Shadow for more stories like this. We uncover the unheard, the unseen, the truths that hide in the dark corners of our world. In our next episode, we'll bring you another case that will challenge what you think you know about trust, safety, and justice. Until then, may your family stay safe, and may we never forget the voice of Christina Spicuzza, whispering in the night, "I have a family. I have 4 kids."